A millionaire fired every nanny for less, but when his twins called her Mama, he couldn't react. An old mansion in the quiet suburbs of New England, where oil paintings watched silently from the walls and crimson carpets stretched across endless corridors, carried a painful secret. For 5 long years, a little girl's voice had been lost to silence. Lily Grant, a 7-year-old girl with deep blue eyes, had never uttered a sound since the day her mother passed away. Her silence was not caused by illness. Leading specialists from New York, Boston, and Los Angeles had examined her, running countless tests. They offered vague diagnoses, helpless explanations, and then left, abandoning a house still drowning in silence. Her father, Alexander Grant, a wealthy and accomplished publisher, had spent millions on treatments, doctors, and the latest technology. But money could not buy the one thing he longed for most, the pure sound of his daughter's voice. And then, one day, when everyone else had given up, a woman knocked on the doors of the Grant estate. She carried no medical diplomas to hang on the walls, no sophisticated devices. All she brought with her was a heart that knew how to listen, a heart that once understood what silence truly meant. Her name was Emily Carter, and her arrival would forever change the story of the Grant family. Mornings at the Grant estate always began with heavy silence. Sunlight streamed through towering windows, spilling across polished marble floors, yet it could not pierce the emptiness that had lingered there for years. Alexander Grant, a man in his early 40s, walked down the long hallway lined with dark wooden frames. Each frame held a certificate, a letter of recognition, a signature from doctors, speech therapists, psychologists, every supposed last hope for his daughter. 27 faces, 27 attempts, 27 disappointments. Every time he looked at them, a single unanswerable question weighed upon him. Why had everyone failed? And why, with all his money and influence, was he still powerless to save his own child? Lily, his only daughter, sat by her bedroom window, quietly turning the pages of a picture book without a single sound. Her blue eyes were as still as a winter lake, silent yet unfathomably deep. Alexander often stood at the half-closed door, watching her for hours. He longed to hear her call, even just a simple word like Dad. But all he received was silence. He once believed time would eventually coax her voice out. But 5 years had passed, each day carving deeper lines of despair. The doctors agreed. Lily was perfectly healthy. No brain injury, no physical impairment, no biological cause. They used the term selective mutism, a silence rooted in psychology, rare and painfully complex. Alexander recalled countless meetings with renowned specialists. They spoke in long clinical terms, drew charts, recommended costly therapies. He signed every bill, paid every fee, but the outcome never changed. Lily remained silent. What tormented him more than medicine's failure was his own helplessness. He was a man of influence, able to publish books that shaped public opinion, able to sign million-dollar deals. Yet at home, he was nothing but a powerless father, unable to hear the voice of his only child. The grand house had slowly turned into a mausoleum of memories. The living room, once alive with the laughter of his wife, Sarah, now echoed only with the ticking of a clock. The garden, where she had sung lullabies to Lily, lay abandoned, overrun with weeds. Every corner of the house seemed haunted by loss. Claire, the loyal housekeeper who had been with the family for 30 years, urged Alexander more than once to stop, to accept reality. But how could he accept it when his daughter had never once called him Dad? At night, in his study filled with the haze of cigar smoke, Alexander often sat alone, a glass of whiskey in hand. Each sip carried a bitter weight. Through the window, he stared at the forgotten garden cloaked in darkness and wondered, perhaps fate has condemned her to silence forever. And yet, deep inside his heart, hope refused to die. Hope that somewhere, somehow, there might still be another way. a person who could bring Lily's lost voice back to life. And in that fragile moment of longing, destiny was preparing to send Emily Carter into their lives. While Alexander was slowly resigning himself to the futility of his efforts, in a small town not far away, a woman was preparing for a turning point in her life. Emily Carter, 32, had once been a preschool teacher. She left teaching years ago to care for her frail grandmother, the woman who had raised her after her parents died in an accident. After her grandmother's passing, Emily lived quietly, taking part-time jobs to make ends meet. She had no advanced degrees, no prestigious career, only a gentle patience and a heart rich with compassion. When Claire, the Grants' longtime housekeeper, posted a notice for a new nanny for Lily, Emily hesitated for a long time before applying. She knew she was nothing like the previous candidates, doctors, therapists, specialists with polished resumes. But something urged her forward. She understood silence. She had lived through a childhood where words were trapped by grief and loss. On the day of the interview, the sky was gray and cold. Emily wore the only formal dress she owned, carefully mended at the seams. Entering Alexander's vast office, she immediately felt the distance between his world, powerful, wealthy, and hers, simple, fragile. Alexander sat behind a massive wooden desk, his sharp eyes scanning her thin resume. "You have no degree in psychology, no experience with special needs children, just a background as a regular preschool teacher. Why should I trust you?" His voice was hoarse, weary. Emily clasped her hands tightly, but her voice remained steady. "Mr. Grant, it's true. I don't have diplomas. But I have something Lily needs. Patience and a heart willing to listen. I won't see her as a case to fix. I'll see her as a child who is still searching for her own way to speak." At that moment, Alexander looked up and met Emily's clear, determined eyes. For the first time in years, he glimpsed a sincerity none of the experts had ever brought into his home. "All right," Alexander finally said, his tone heavy. "You'll have 1 month of trial, but don't hope too much. 27 people more qualified than you have failed." Emily nodded gently. She knew she carried nothing but faith in genuine connection, and as she stepped out of his office that day, her heart whispered a promise. "I will listen to Lily in a way no one ever has before." On Emily's first official day at the Grant estate, the air remained thick with distance. The staff moved quietly through the halls, careful not to make too much noise. Silence had become an unspoken rule of this house. When Claire led Emily into Lily's room, the door opened to reveal a vast space decorated like a fairy tale world. Shelves lined with imported storybooks, dolls arranged neatly, and a white princess bed. But at the center of the room, Lily sat alone on the carpet, focused on assembling the pieces of a puzzle with over 1,000 fragments. The girl did not look up, showed no curiosity, no reaction at all to Emily's presence. Claire sighed softly, whispering, "You'll get used to it. Don't expect her to respond." Then she quietly slipped away, leaving the two of them in a heavy silence. Emily didn't move closer. She sat down on the rug, leaving enough space so as not to intrude upon the child's private world. She watched the small hands carefully fit each piece into its rightful place. Lily's concentration moved Emily deeply. The girl was silent, but her eyes and hands were speaking in their own language. "It's beautiful," Emily murmured, her voice warm, never demanding. "It looks like a garden." "When I was little, my grandmother had a small garden with yellow roses. When the wind blew, it felt like the garden was whispering secrets to me." Lily didn't reply, but her movement slowed, as if she were listening. Emily smiled gently and continued. "When I was your age, I didn't want to talk to anyone either. People kept asking, kept urging me, and all I wanted was to hide in silence. But my grandmother taught me, sometimes silence is also a way of speaking. She picked up a stray puzzle piece and carefully placed it near Lily, never pushing closer. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Lily's blue eyes lifted briefly, meeting Emily's gentle gaze. The child reached out, her tiny fingers brushing Emily's as she took the piece. It was not speech, but it was the first signal, an acceptance, however fragile. That afternoon, Alexander quietly stood at the door, watching. His chest tightened. He had seen dozens of doctors sit in front of his daughter, asking questions, scribbling notes, leaving with helpless looks. But no one had ever sat on the carpet, sharing silence with Lily the way Emily had just done. He walked away, carrying both hope and fear. Was this truly a beginning, or just a fleeting moment that would vanish? Meanwhile, Emily remained by Lily's side, neither urging nor rushing. She whispered as though speaking only to herself, yet just loud enough for the child to hear. "You don't have to hurry. I have all the time in the world to be here with you." And in that silence-filled room, an invisible thread had just been tied, fragile, yet enough to signal that change had begun. The first days of Emily's time with Lily had planted fragile seeds of hope in Alexander's heart. He began to realize that there were things money could never buy, yet a genuine heart could touch. The way Emily never forced, never commanded, only stayed quietly and patiently by Lily's side, made the little girl begin to crack open the first doors of her closed-off world. Yet the journey was still long. Lily remained silent. Though her eyes now held a trace of trust, though her small gestures showed she was beginning to accept Emily, there was still a distance, like an invisible wall keeping her from stepping fully into the light. Emily knew that to truly reach Lily's heart, she needed more than ordinary conversations. She had to find a place, a bridge connecting to the deepest memories the child still held on to. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped westward and its golden light washed over the mansion's stone walls, Emily decided to take Lily for a walk across the sprawling grounds. Sometimes a change of scenery could open a new door within a child's heart. They wandered past moss-covered stone paths and ancient maples. Then suddenly, Emily noticed an old, rusted iron gate, nearly hidden beneath climbing vines. She stopped and pushed gently. The gate creaked open, revealing a narrow path leading into a forgotten garden. Lily froze, her deep blue eyes lit with a strange gleam, part wonder, part recognition. Emily stepped slowly inside, breathing in the air of abandonment. Tangled weeds, wilted flowers, a stone bench buried beneath fallen leaves. Yet amidst the neglect, something lingered. Memory. "This was your mother's garden, wasn't it?" Emily asked softly. Lily hesitated, then gave the faintest nod. It was the first time she had affirmed anything with action. In the days that followed, Emily and Lily returned to the garden. They brought gloves, small trowels, and packets of seeds. Emily showed Lily how to pull weeds, turn the soil, plant fresh blooms. Each time the girl's small hands touched the earth, her eyes brightened, as if she were reaching for a piece of her mother. One afternoon, as they cleared a corner near the old maple tree, Lily suddenly stopped. From beneath the soil and decaying leaves, her small hands unearthed a weathered wooden box, its clasp rusted shut. Emily carefully opened it. Inside lay a tiny silver music box and a fabric-bound notebook. Lily trembled, eyes wide. When Emily wound the tiny key at the side, the music box played a delicate melody, haunting and tender, like a voice returning from far away. Lily clutched it tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. Emily opened the notebook. Its yellowed pages bore graceful handwriting. Poems, short reflections, sketches of the garden once full of life. On the very first page, Sarah had written, "For Lily, my little girl, when you can't hear my voice, let these pages speak for me." Emily's throat tightened. She closed the notebook and placed it gently in Lily's hands. The child pressed it to her chest and sat silently for a long time. That night, as Emily tucked Lily into bed, she noticed a small slip of paper resting on the desk. In uneven, trembling letters, it read, "Thank you." It was just 2 words, fragile and shaky, yet to Emily it felt louder than any voice she had ever heard. It was the first time Lily had used writing to communicate. And Emily knew the music box and Sarah's notebook had opened a new path for the girl, a bridge from silence to tiny written notes, carrying an entire world of feeling within them. Ever since discovering the secret garden, Emily and Lily had grown closer than ever. They weeded, planted, and with every spade of soil, every new bloom, it seemed as though layers of dust were being lifted from the little girl's soul. In that garden, Lily began leaving tiny notes, scribbling short words in place of speech. Flower. Smile. Music. To others, they might look like fragments, but to Emily and to Alexander, they were precious steps forward, the first whispers of a voice returning from years of silence. Alexander often stood at a distance, his heart overwhelmed with emotions he could hardly name. He saw his daughter laugh while picking up a fallen petal, her small hands scrawling uneven letters, and Emily quietly sitting beside her, eyes filled with patience and love. In those moments, he knew a miracle was truly unfolding. But life always tests what is fragile. The bond that had just begun to form was as delicate as a young bud before the storm. What if one strong gust could snuff out the fragile flame of hope? And then, on a fateful night, the sky grew heavy with rolling clouds. Wind howled through the cracks of the old mansion. Darkness and thunder prepared to sweep the house into a new trial, a trial that would change everything. That night, dark clouds swirled over the city. Wind howled, battering the tall windows of the Grant estate. A sudden crack rang out. The power went out, plunging the entire house into darkness. Lightning slashed through the night, briefly illuminating the halls, only to leave them drowned in heavy shadows. Upstairs, Lily trembled, her heart racing. She hated storms, the sudden sounds, the blinding light, the shaking that felt like the world was coming apart. In panic, she rushed to lock her door, then crawled under the bed, clutching the music box tightly against her chest. Outside, Emily was hurrying toward the stairs when she heard the slam of a door and the muffled sobs coming from Lily's room. She stopped, took a deep breath, and gently knocked on the door. "Lily, it's me. You're safe. I'm right here with you." Inside, only soft sobs answered. Emily didn't pound, didn't push. She sat down right against the door, her back leaning on the wood, and began speaking slowly, like telling a story. "When I was little, I was afraid of thunder too. My grandmother taught me a game. Every time there's lightning, count how many seconds until you hear the thunder. The longer it takes, the farther away the storm is." At that moment, lightning flashed, cutting through the hallway like a silver blade. Emily whispered, "1, 2, 3," and then thunder exploded. "See? 3 seconds. That means it's far away." Beneath the bed, Lily lifted her tear-streaked face. Her lips pressed together as she listened. Another flash lit up the sky. Emily counted 1, 2, 4, and thunder rolled. "Farther this time. Want to count with me?" At first, only silence. Then, when the next bolt lit the room, Emily began counting, and this time Lily mouthed the numbers in silence, as if whispering them in her mind. And so they sat on opposite sides of the door, one patiently whispering, the other trembling but listening. Each number became a tiny bridge, connecting 2 worlds divided by fear. Then a sudden crash of thunder struck close, shaking the entire house. Lily screamed, and from her trembling lips burst a word, fragile but unmistakable. "Daddy!" Emily froze. In the hallway, Alexander, who had rushed upstairs in fear for his daughter, stood stunned. That single word, the first sound after years of silence, was not drawn out by lessons or doctors. It was fear and love that pulled it from the depths of Lily's heart. Alexander rushed forward, pounding the door. "Lily! Daddy's here! Open the door for me!" Inside, Lily still sobbed, but her trembling hands slowly turned the key. The door swung open, revealing the small girl clutching the music box, her eyes red with tears. Alexander dropped to his knees, arms wide. Lily threw herself into his embrace, crying as she whispered the word buried for so long. "Daddy! Daddy!" Emily stood in the doorway, tears brimming. She knew. She had just witnessed a miracle, the moment a child found her voice again. And from this night on, nothing would ever be the same. The moment Lily cried out, "Daddy!" became an unforgettable milestone for Alexander. He held his daughter tightly, feeling her small body trembling in his arms, and for the first time in years, tears fell down his cheeks. That simple word, 3 short syllables, shattered the cold shell around his heart since the day Sarah was gone. After that stormy night, everything seemed different. Alexander no longer stood at a distance, watching his daughter through half-closed doors. He began to take part more often, morning walks in the garden, afternoons sitting with Emily and Lily to read together. At times, he quietly picked up Sarah's journal and read aloud, letting all 3 of them listen. Emily realized Alexander, too, was learning to heal. If Lily was finding her voice, Alexander was rediscovering his ability to share. In his daughter's soft laughter, in the afternoons they spent pulling weeds together, he slowly shed the armor he had worn for far too long. One afternoon, while they were tending to blooming carnations in the garden, Lily suddenly pointed at a bright red blossom. Her voice came, hesitant but clear. "Flower." Alexander froze, eyes wide. Emily smiled encouragingly. "Yes, flower." From then on, new words began to bloom in the house that had once been drowned in silence. Book, when Lily wanted Emily to read another page from her mother's journal. Music, when she wound the music box and listened to its tender melody. Each small word was like a seed, each utterance a tender sprout, rising from soil once thought barren. Alexander began writing down every new word his daughter spoke, as if afraid they might slip away. Once he placed a hand on Emily's shoulder and whispered, "It's not only Lily who's learning to speak. I'm learning to listen." In the mansion that once echoed only with wind through empty halls, there was now laughter, gentle conversation, and the first words of a child reborn. The house was no longer a tomb of memories, but slowly becoming a home where past and present wove together into hope. Since that stormy night, Emily was no longer just a nanny in the Grant household. She became the bridge that joined the broken pieces, helping Lily rediscover her voice and helping Alexander rediscover his heart. Alexander had always been a man of numbers, contracts, and tense boardrooms. Yet beside Emily, he learned patience, learned to listen, learned how to kneel on the ground with his daughter to plant seeds, or turn the fragile pages of Sarah's journal with a gentleness that even he found unfamiliar within himself. Emily was not only a pillar for Lily. Gradually, she became a pillar for Alexander, too. Whenever the past weighed heavily on him, Emily reminded him that loss could never erase love, and that memories could become wings instead of chains. One evening, as the 3 sat together in the living room after dinner, Lily brought out a drawing. It showed 3 figures, Alexander, Lily, and Emily, holding hands beneath a starry sky. The constellations glittered in blue and silver, and the 3 small figures stood side by side, no longer alone. Alexander held the paper, his eyes glistening. He looked at Emily, saw her face flushed, her lips trembling with emotion. Lily said nothing, only smiled, her gaze shining as if to say, "Now we are a family." That night, after Lily was asleep, Alexander asked Emily to walk with him to the secret garden. The moonlight spread silver across the flowers they had tended together. The gentle trickle of the fountain mingled with the sweet scent of lavender. The secret garden that night seemed to wear a new gown. Moonlight spilled across the flower beds, shimmering on the clear fountain water like scattered crystals. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves, carrying the sweet scent of lavender and wild roses. Emily followed Alexander, her heart beating faster than usual. There was something in his manner tonight that made her sense this moment would change everything. He was no longer the stoic businessman, but a man whose eyes held both resolve and trembling vulnerability. Alexander stopped by the old stone bench, the very place Lily had once said where Sarah used to sit and read. He drew in a deep breath, then turned to Emily. "Emily," he began, his voice rough with emotion, "for years I've lived like a ghost. I worked, I breathed, but I didn't truly live. I built walls around myself and around my daughter, thinking it would protect us from pain." He bent, picking up a fallen petal, turning it gently between his fingers. "Then you came, not with theories or titles, but with patience and a heart that truly listened. You made Lily smile, made her speak, and without meaning to, you awakened a part of me I thought had died with Sarah." Emily felt her vision blur. Every word she wanted to say caught in her throat. From his pocket, Alexander drew out a small velvet box. His hand trembled slightly as he opened it. Inside lay a simple silver ring, set with a luminous pearl. The moonlight danced upon its surface, glowing with quiet purity, unpretentious, yet as tender as new love. He lowered to one knee before her, his voice breaking. "Emily, I am not asking you to forget Sarah. I will never forget her. But love is not about replacing. It's about continuing. I want to live again, to share life with someone, to care for Lily together, to let this garden and this heart bloom once more." He lifted his gaze, eyes glistening with both fragility and strength. "You have become part of my family, of us. And if you will allow it, I want you to be my wife. Not just Lily's companion, but mine too, for all the days to come." Tears streamed down Emily's cheeks, but her lips curved into a radiant smile. She touched his face gently, whispering through her trembling breath, "Yes, I will. I want to write the rest of this story with you both." Alexander's hands shook slightly as he slid the ring onto her finger. Rising, he pulled her into his arms. Two souls, once broken, now found each other in a moment, both simple and sacred. And above them, as if the universe bore witness, the stars blazed brighter than ever, illuminating the new path they were about to walk together. Alexander and Emily's wedding was quiet, yet overflowing with joy. In the secret garden they had revived together, close friends and a few relatives gathered on rows of simple wooden chairs. Roses and lavender bloomed in abundance, forming a natural backdrop for the sacred moment. Lily, dressed in a little white gown, served as the maid of honor. She wore a daisy crown on her head and clutched her mother's notebook tightly, as if to ensure Sarah was present on this special day. When Alexander held Emily's hand and spoke his vows, Lily beamed, her eyes glittering like stars, whispering, "Now I have a whole family." After the simple ceremony, the three sat together in the golden afternoon light. There was no grandeur, no crowds, only genuine love. That wedding opened a new chapter, not only in their story, but in the life of each of them. A year passed. Lily now spoke fluently, even loved telling stories to anyone who would listen. She often sat in the garden, reading aloud the new tales Emily had written, sometimes pausing to sing in her clear little voice. Her laughter filled the once silent house, transforming the old mansion into a home alive with warmth. Emily had become a children's book author. Her stories, inspired by Lily and by Sarah's memory, quickly touched the hearts of readers. The little characters in her tales learned to overcome fear, rediscover their voices, and uncover the strength of love. Emily often said, "Every book is a whisper from Sarah and a song from Lily." Alexander, too, had changed. Once buried in the shadows of loss, he now smiled more freely and released the weight of his solitude. He no longer avoided speaking of Sarah. Instead, he remembered her with gentle gratitude. Most importantly, he had opened his heart to embrace new happiness, the happiness Emily and Lily had brought. One radiant summer morning, as sunlight poured across the garden, Emily took Alexander's hand, her eyes brimming with a tender secret. Lily was chasing butterflies when she noticed her father and stepmother sitting seriously on the stone bench. "What's going on?" Lily asked curiously. Emily smiled softly, resting her hand on her belly. Alexander looked at his daughter and nodded. "You're going to be a big sister, Lily," he said. Lily's mouth dropped open, then she squealed with delight. She leapt around the garden, laughing like a silver bell. "I'll have a baby brother or sister. I'll teach them to sing, tell them stories, and play here in the garden." Alexander laughed, pulling her into his arms, while Emily wept tears of happiness. That day the three embraced under the boundless blue sky. The future was no longer a closed door, but an open road, brimming with promise. In their hearts, Sarah still lived, not as a shadow of sorrow, but as part of the strength that carried them forward. And now, with a new life on the way, the story of the Grant family was only just beginning. Just a few months after the joyful news, the cry of a newborn baby echoed through the Grant estate. Alexander and Emily named him Ethan, a name meaning strong and enduring. To them it was a blessing, a hope that Ethan would grow up surrounded by love, unity, and the warmth of a family Alexander once feared his daughter might never have. The day Emily held Ethan in her arms for the first time, Lily stood beside the bed, her blue eyes shining with happiness. She whispered softly, "Hello, Ethan. I'm your sister." No one in the room could hold back their tears, for only a year ago Lily had been unable to speak a single word. And now she was the very first to welcome her brother with her own voice. From that moment on, the once silent mansion overflowed with sound. Ethan's gentle cries blended with Lily's laughter and the warm melodies Alexander played on the piano, long left untouched. Emily often sat on the porch writing new children's tales, while from afar came the music and laughter rising from the secret garden, the very place where everything began to change. They say a house reflects the soul of those who live within it. If that is true, then the Grant home had been reborn. No longer a fortress of sorrowful memories, it became a haven filled with footsteps, lullabies, and the sweet calls of Mommy and Daddy echoing through its halls. Lily's journey, from silence to speech, had become the very heartbeat of this family. With love and patience, they proved that even in the heaviest silence, a seed of life waits to bloom. And when truly heard, even silence can blossom into a symphony of the heart. One golden afternoon, Alexander cradled Ethan in his arms. Lily laughed as she ran through the garden, and Emily sat on the stone bench, writing the next page of her story. The breeze carried the fragrance of lavender and roses, a reminder that every beginning can be beautiful when nurtured with love. And in that moment, the Grant family's journey was not ending. It was only just beginning, guided by music and laughter toward a future filled with promise.